All right, welcome everybody. We are officially live. We got another good crowd for today. Well over 100 schools have registered, so we're going to give it about a minute or two to let everybody hop in, and then we'll officially get started. As you're hopping in, it's always great to see where you're dialing in from. So if you in the chat, what school you're with, what state, where you're calling in from, it'd be great.
While people are coming in, I'll introduce myself. My name is Tim Selden. I'm the president of the Montessori Foundation. And the slideshow that you're going to see, and the slideshows you typically see, are an example of why we all need to use artificial intelligence to help us in our work. For example, I'm right now not sitting in my living room, which is what looks like I'm in. I'm sitting in the conference room at Charlotte Montessori School in Charlotte, North Carolina. I created this slideshow this morning in about 15 minutes, and I did it with Abigail, who is my trained artificial intelligence, otherwise known as an instance of ChatGPT, the paid account that I have trained over the last year to know how to speak in my voice, to know everything I've written, she's read every article I've ever written, and I've trained her how to do this kind of stuff. So while it's not as good as I know how to produce, it's really great. We need to quickly write an essay, summarize a conversation or a meeting, and so forth. So I just want to make a big pitch for the intelligent use as school leaders of artificial intelligence, because while it's not a panacea for everything, it can really help us get a lot more done in the limited time that we have available. Clint, let me let you get started with housekeeping.
All right, and we should probably do a webinar on exactly how you created this. The webinar should be on how you created your webinar using AI. I think that'd be pretty helpful. But with that being said, and thanks everybody for typing in the chat where you're calling in from. Recognize a lot of names, so it's good to see a lot of familiar names on here. Yeah, a few housekeeping items. We're recording. It will be sent out to everybody within 24 hours. We have some handouts today which you'll get as well. And again, if for whatever reason you don't see it in your email, you can always go to the Montessori Foundation YouTube page, and recordings will be posted there as well. And somebody said the workshop started at 9 a.m. PST. That's interesting. I wonder how that got messed up. Thank you for letting me know. I'll double check that, Soraya. Um, at the end, when you're exiting the webinar, we have a little post webinar survey. Let us know what you like, what you want to learn more about. If you need any further assistance or help or resources, whether it's from Tim and the Montessori Foundation when it comes to consulting or professional development. On my end, I own a software company called Ames. It's an all-in-one marketing, admissions, tuition software platform. We've also partnered with Montessori Compass to truly have an all-in-one, what we call the Montessori Growth Suite. So you'll see a questionnaire at the end that says, hey, are you interested in a demo or learning more about the Growth Suite? And we'll send you some more information if you want to check that out as well. And lastly, we'll have time for Q&A, whether at the end or as we're going through. So use the Q&A feature here in Zoom. Toss your questions in there. I'll be behind the scenes. Just keep an eye on those for you, Tim. And with that being said, Tim, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Well, the Montessori Foundation is 34 years old now. We were inspired by a group that I really admire and often recommend to people, independent school management. We felt that as wonderful as independent school management, a lot of small schools couldn't afford them. And especially the Montessori schools that we work with often felt that there was a mismatch between their understanding of education and what Montessori needed. So while we highly recommend them, we are a nonprofit, a group out there doing our own work, helping schools with board development, leadership development and coaching, school consulting, marketing analysis, whatever you need, we're here to help. So today, This is one of our two weekly webcasts. Uh, this one is a true webinar format. The other one on Tuesday, at the same time, is specifically on marketing, and we do it as a webinar or a Zoom meeting so you can really be seen and heard very easily. By the way, when we're doing questions and answers, we have the ability to unmute you, and we're happy to hear you talking, but we can't see you, unfortunately. We really are here today to try to deal with the kinds of issues that interest us as school leaders. Like you, I have been doing this for a long time. I have run schools large and small. And I think the topic of the day is one we all know because parents come to us and say, "Do you have a moment?" And they then proceed to cry or dump on you or tell you why they're upset or why you've let them down or whatever, why their spouse is ready to kill you. But fortunately, the spouse isn't there at the moment. So we want to respond to parent concerns and complaints, and we want to do it in a way that makes the relationship stronger if possible, and certainly at the very least is kind, compassionate, and professional, rather than feeling like this is one more example of how we are the wrong person to be running our school because we are overwhelmed. So this is a guide for independent school leaders, including independent or publicly funded Montessori leaders. And again, whether you're in a Montessori charter school, whether you're in a public school, whether you're privately owned, nonprofit, or for profit, we understand where you're at. We speak your language. We're happy to help. So today's topic is dealing with parent concerns and complaints. So let's start with some basic. Why do you want to respond to complaints professionally rather than crying? The first is when we don't get angry and say, "Leave me alone," it builds trust and it strengthens the relationship between us and the family. And us, not just us as individuals, but us as part of the school. The second is ideally, we avoid court or we avoid them walking away from us and withdrawing from the school. So the goal is to preserve the relationship and try to keep it from escalating. The third is it models the respect and grace that we want them to display to our staff and our community. And as our goal is to reinforce the culture of our school community that we believe in. Thirdly, or fourthly, we're trying to demonstrate that we're accountable, that if they've got a concern, we will respond to them. We're not going to duck and hide from it, and that we are professional. So there are lots of common parent concerns. One of my wife's favorite ones is she answers the phone quite often at the foundation. And there's one parent complained why the school that their child was attending didn't let her child microwave soup because every child needs to have hot soup every day. There are all kinds of parent concerns. Why does my child come home with dirty diapers? Why did my child not get an A in that class? He worked so hard. Why does your school give so much homework? Or why don't you give any homework? Or why, I thought this was Montessori school and we've had a resignation. And my kid's in a classroom that doesn't have a Montessori teacher. We've heard it all. So the typical complaints that we're likely to hear are academic progress and individual learning. In other words, I got a concern about my kids learning. I've got a concern about the behavior in the classroom. Either the way the teacher's behaving or there's another kid in the classroom. I remember one parent came to the school I was at and said, where is this child? I want that kid's head on a silver platter. So they get really angry if somebody beats up on their kid or is mean to their kids. Communication with teachers or staff. They feel like the teacher isn't giving me any feedback. I have no idea what's going on all day. Or the communication that's coming out is illiterate. What kind of teachers you got at that school? They can't even spell Montessori. School policies and procedures. What do you mean you're not going to release me from that contract? What do you mean I can't drop my kid off at 7 in the morning? What do you mean you can't get someone in here? Why are you charging me this much money? Whatever it is, we've all heard it before. Or safety, health, and well-being. My kid's got a nut allergy. For example, you may have nut trees on your campus. The nut trees may drop nuts. You may have to cut down a nut tree because you've got a nut allergic child, which can be both expensive and sad because you may have a big, beautiful tree, and now you got to cut it down because it might affect the health and well-being of a child. These are examples of typical complaints that we might hear in the course of a day, a week, a month, who knows? There are core principles that we're going to follow in responding to these kinds of concerns. One is, tell me more. Tell me more. You want to listen actively and you want to listen without interrupting them. Tell me more. That's one of the most basic phrases I use. Tell me more. Just listening. You don't have to know what you're going to do. You don't have to worry about whether the parent is right or wrong. Just listen. The second is acknowledge the parent's perspective. Now, you want to be careful because they get really angry if they think you're doing psychobabble on them. But you want to definitely acknowledge, I hear you. You are really, really upset about this. I can't tell you if I agree with you or I don't. What I can tell you is I want to understand what your concern is. What I promise you is I'm going to try to understand. I'm going to listen really carefully. And I promise you, I'm going to get back to you. If I can't respond on the spot, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to get back to you really quickly. The third is hard. Try to remain calm and try to remain respectful. And when they're yelling at you and when they're threatening you and when they got, someone really, really angry in your face, it can be very hard to remain calm and respectful when they're telling you they're going to close your school down, they're going to sue you, they're going to come and you are going to regret it for the rest of your life. This is hard to do when they're really aggressive. The fourth is you want to focus on solutions, not on blame. You definitely don't want to throw your teachers under the bus. On the other hand, I will suggest to you, you are not there to be your teacher's protector. You definitely want to keep your teachers from being yelled at or taken to court, whatever. You are trying to get them through whatever is going on. But the teachers are not always right any more than the customer is. The goal is to try to be an adult and to help a bunch of adults to figure out what the heck is going on here. So you're going to focus on a solution, not on who's at fault. Quite often, what the other side wants is, I want that rascal punished, that person that did this to my child, this person that did this to my family. They want revenge. That is certainly an understandable thing that some people feel that. You certainly aren't going to get caught up in it. Likewise, you're not going to get caught up in being, again, the defender of your teachers. You're not going to throw them under the bus, nor are you going to assume that the teacher is always right. Finally, you're going to end up making some agreements or commitments, and you're going to treat them seriously, and you're going to follow through. The idea is you've got to be good for your word. Now, by the way, if you're like the rest of us, sooner or later, you're going to forget. Sooner or later, you're not going to follow through. Real imperfect human beings run schools. But we want to make a fetish of trying to keep our word and following through carefully. This is a step-by-step response framework that I personally recommend. You may have a different one. There's no one way to do this stuff, but I would suggest that the rules are: first, listen. Listen attentively and take notes. Is it okay if I take notes? Is it okay if I record this? A lot of people don't like it if you record them. But if you explain to them, look, I'm not using this to get you in trouble. I'm listening. I'm doing this because I want to remember what you're saying. I want to be sure I don't forget because I know this is important to you. So whether you're taking printed notes or you're typing a computer, I personally like using a device like what's called Applaud, and I'm going to show it in front of the camera. This is my smartphone. It only goes into focus at a certain level. On the back of my phone is a little magnetic digital device. It's called Applaud, Plaud. I am not a salesman for Plaud. I want to acknowledge Jennifer Ian Coney of Magnolia Montessori, New Jersey, who introduced me to Plaud. It is a recorder. Now, your phone is a recorder too, but Applaud takes the recording and very quickly turns into transcript and incredibly detailed notes. Now, these days, I've actually gone beyond Plaud. I have a voice recorder on my phone. I take the recording, and who knew? I just learned yesterday that my voice recorder transcribes within a minute after the recording is done, and it produces a transcript. I copy the transcript, I put it into Abigail, my chat GPT, my graduate student assistant, and I say, Abigail, take this transcript and turn it into a polished summary of what we said without omitting any of the details that we discussed. And within less than a minute, I've got a really good summary, which maybe I have to say, Abigail, that was a good start, but you made it too short, or you put it in my voice and it should be in the person's voice, as if the person who was there was Caroline or whoever. And anyway, we do it. So I'm a great believer in listening and taking notes. The second thing is you want to clarify and you want to restate. In other words, you want to make sure that you understand what they're upset about without making them angry. You don't want to do psychobabble, repeating did I hear you correctly that you said that? They don't like that. But you definitely want to listen. And when you think you got the gist of it, say, can we do a timeout? I just want to make sure I'm hearing it correctly. Or could you, Jessica, restate for me in one statement what you're upset about? Just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. The third thing you're going to do is thank them. You want to thank them for being willing to tell you the truth instead of just being angry. A lot of parents are angry and they just talk to other parents behind the scenes, what we call the parking lot mafia. So the fact that they were willing to come into your office and sit down with you is important, because their fear is you'll kick them out of the school, or you'll be mean to their family, their child, that they'll never be able to look you in the eye again. So they're taking a big risk by telling you what they're feeling. The fourth thing is we want to offer. We want to offer them information or next steps. And a lot of times we can't do that on the spot, because what we got to do is process what we were just told. If they are accusing someone at your school of a whole bunch of stuff and you have no clue of what the truth is, the only thing you can offer is, I promise you, I'm going to take really good notes and I'm going to try to get to the bottom of this, and I'm going to call you up later or tomorrow. Within a certain time frame, I will be in touch. We will look at what I've learned. We will figure out the next steps. On the other hand, if you know information, you give it to them as quickly as you can. Again, don't throw your teacher under the bus. That for all you know, the teacher is not feeling well, is feeling stressed, is feeling burned out, is planning to leave your school in the next week. Who knows what's going on? So the teacher may be feeling very vulnerable, and the teacher, may have responded in a hostile or defensive way for a reason that you know about, but you don't need the parent to know about. So protect the teacher. You want to commit. You want to commit that you will follow up and you will tell them that, I'm not only going to follow up, I'm going to help you get satisfaction in this matter if I can, without promising them what the outcome will be. So you want to follow some standard techniques that tend to be good at de-escalating conflict. One of them is staying calm and lowering your voice. Now, I'm speaking to you in a fairly loud, probably sounds like assertive way. One of the things that people tell me is that normally I speak very softly and very soothingly. I've had a lot of people say, I really could listen to you all day long. When I'm presenting, I try to speak in a fairly assertive way. When I'm meeting with parents, I often don't talk much at all. And when I do, I deliberately slow my voice down. I don't want to sound phony, but I'm not going to allow myself to get caught up in emotion. So stay calm and lower your voice. Secondly, try desperately to avoid being defensive in your language. Don't do the yes, but, or you don't understand, or you have no idea how hard it is to run a school. Don't do that. These people are upset. As my friend Renee Farkas would say, it's their precious child. And they're not rational when it has to do with their child. So just know they're not rational. They could be rational later today, but at the moment they're not being rational. Third thing is you want to validate emotions without agreeing to their accusations. Now, in validating their emotions, you're not admitting to guilt. You're not saying, oh, yes, that teacher does this all the time. Or I'm so sorry that this teacher did this to you. That's not what you want to do. But you do want to validate, I hear you. You know, I would be really upset if I felt that a teacher had been rude to my child too. Let's try to figure out what actually happened and we'll sort this out. Fourth, suggest a private conversation if needed. Now, by that, what I mean is quite often the parent is really upset and they're doing this in the parking lot in front of other people. And you typically would say, if you can, you know, I hear you. Would you like to get out of the car and come to my office? Let's sit down and talk this out. That's what I mean by that. If you can, get them out of the public eye. And finally, if they lose it, if they start becoming threatening and aggressive and some great big, tall man or woman starts getting in your face, you may need to do a timeout and say, I think we need to stop this conversation now. I hear you're really, really angry and upset. I get it, but I think we're not getting anywhere this way. I think let's reconvene tomorrow. And hopefully we can have a civilized conversation and get to the bottom of what is really going on here. So we want to do a few other things. The first is we want to keep a record of their concern and our responses. In other words, when the meeting's over, memorialize it. Write it down. Put the notes of what happened into writing and share it with the people who need to have a copy. By the way, quite often, one of the people you share with is the person with whom you had this conversation. So usually the way that would work is, Victoria, this is just to summarize the meeting we just had. I think I got it correctly. Please let me know if I've misunderstood something. And by the way, this would typically include not only what they were saying, but what did you agree would be the next step? Like I promised you in closing that I would talk to the teacher in question, that I would look into this and try to get to the bottom of it, and I would call you tomorrow morning. The third step is you want to follow through and provide them with updates. Like I just met with the teacher with whom you were upset, and I just want to let you know I have met. I'd like to talk with you about this tomorrow morning, or I'd like to meet with you and the teacher tomorrow. But be as timely as you can. Don't wait until the next day if you can reach them that night. because people don't do well when it festers overnight. Finally, you want to reflect on any patterns. Quite often in any human organization, whether it's a business office or whether it's a school, there are patterns that if you're paying attention, you can recognize. We keep dealing with the same issues every year. Let's try to learn from our mistakes. So the idea is what's going on here? What's our part in this problem? What are we doing or not doing that could have avoided it? And what could we do to make it better in the future? The next thing is we want to build a proactive culture. In doing this, we want to communicate with the families of our school clearly and regularly. So many times, people I've known, including me at times, are in a situation where we know something, but we don't want to communicate to the parents until we know what the solution is. Like, we have just been told that the most popular teacher in school is going to be leaving at the end of the year. And we wait and wait and wait to let the parents know this is happening because we want to have the next teacher already in our pocket. Generally speaking, everything gets out in the school. There are no secrets. People share their salary information. Parents know everything. They overhear it or they sense it or they guess it. It just doesn't work. The sooner you're able to be honest with people, the better. And people respect you when you are forthcoming and honest. It doesn't mean they don't get scared or upset. Trust me, if you have 12 teachers resign from your school, they're going to get upset. They're going to know what the heck is going wrong at your school. On the other hand, in that situation, while you can't talk about individual employees' private lives, you can address it openly and honestly. You don't wait until they're really upset and they want to lynch you. So the sooner you respond, the more openly you respond, the more likely you're going to head off the next crisis down the road. The second thing is you want to provide parent education opportunities. By the way, parents hate the phrase parent education. They're already educated. So whatever you call it, parent evenings, parent forums, parent roundtables, these are opportunities where you and your staff can talk with interested families, keeping in mind that it's usually the same 5 families who are interested out of an entire school, who want to learn about something that they find interesting. By the way, if you record it, if you send out summaries of what we discussed, this expands the number of people who will benefit from whatever you do. But don't be discouraged when you do parent education evenings or afternoons or mornings and the same 5 people show up, because that's pretty common. By the way, you can improve it, obviously, if you provide childcare, if you make it in a setting that people enjoy, because they often don't like coming to your classroom, especially if their kids are little and they're sitting in chairs designed for 3-year-olds and they're under fluorescent lights and they're listening to one of your 20, 30 something year old teachers, lecture them about parenting. They quite often are looking down their nose at this and saying, come on, get real. I'd rather be watching, whatever the latest TV show is. Third thing is we want to create really comfortable ways that people can let you know what they're thinking. Most schools will do a survey when families are withdrawing, which is fine. I want to do a survey before they start. I want to do a survey a week after they start. I want to do a survey on a regular basis. And it could either be a big, long-winded survey or it could be a single question, like a poll. I talk to people all the time. Tell me more. Tell me more. How are things going? But I want to record it. I want to remember, who was I talking to? What was the day I was talking to them? And what did they say? And not rely on my memory, but create really safe, comfortable channels for feedback. At Barry, in the days before computers, I used to have a little, it was like a greeting card, and it said, a note to Tim. And on the front, it said, I want to brag about, and they could check that off, or I want to let you know that I am upset about, or I have a suggestion, or you just need to know. And there might have been another thing. I have the original form. And then inside they could write. And they would check this off and they would put it in a little suggestion box, and I would read them regularly. So you want to create as welcoming a way for them to let you know what they're thinking as you possibly can. The fourth thing you want to do is recognize and celebrate the idea that we are in it together. These guys did not swear an oath of allegiance to your school or to Montessori education or to Maria Montessori or whatever you're doing. They're there as long as it's convenient. And if they find something better, they're going to go. On the other hand, while they're with us, we can make every day the best we possibly can. And we do that by really making it clear that this is not a family, this is a partnership. We are a community, and we're here to help you raise a nice kid in a pretty crazy world. The Montessori Foundation's logo is "We're here to help." That's probably pretty good for all of our schools. So again, going out of your way to get across the idea of what partnership looks like and how we're here to help your family and what you can ask us to do. The idea that our school is not simply a business that you pay money to. We are actually an extension of your family. We're here to help you. We're not perfect, but we want to do everything we can to be the best source of partnership and help that your family could get. So here's a few examples of what handling parent concerns well might look like. The first up there, and they read them across, is a concern that a parent worries that their child isn't being challenged enough academically. And so you could respond to that by acknowledging the concern, sharing examples of the child's progress, which you're not going to do on the spot. You're going to say, okay, let me look into this. And you sit down and say, let's meet tomorrow. And you pull out a portfolio of the child's work and say, well, here's examples of what the child is doing. By the way, the parent may look at the same work and say, is that all there is? So don't be surprised if what looks good to you doesn't look so good to the parent. On the other hand, telling them the truth of what is it you actually are finding is where you start. You can also invite the parent to come in and observe the class in action or a lesson or whatever. Another example of a concern dropping down a row is a parent who feels the communication of the teacher is lacking. They either never send me any information, it always goes to spam, it's illiterate in the way it's written, or it doesn't tell me anything, it's all fluff. So whatever it is, that's what they feel. So your response might be, thank them for sharing. Ask, how would you wish we would communicate? And there's a lot of people don't even see their email, or they might be getting the information from an app like the Bright Wheel app or the Montessori Compass app or whatever app. And they may not like that. And they may say, well, if I have to go find it in the app, I can deal with that, but I don't remember to go to the app. I want a text letting me know I've got a new message. The third example is a parent is upset about something like the behavior of the children on the playground. I'm upset because, Mark Selden beat up on my kid, or he said, and there's a real story, a kid on a playground at one of the schools I worked at said, I hate you, and my father's coming to your house tonight. He's going to kill your dog. That's a real story. So you can see why a parent might come in and be really, really upset if their kid comes home in tears and says, oh, he's going to come and he's going to kill the dog. His father's going to come and kill my dog. That's really serious. And often what the parent wants is you to drag that kid in, drag the kid's parent in, throw them out of the school, get them out of here. See, that kid goes or I go. Ideally, you want to calm everyone down. You definitely don't want to sweep it under the rug. It's not okay. So what can you do? So first is you listen calmly. You gather the facts. because their kid said something is true doesn't mean it's true. Just because the parent says it's true doesn't mean it's true. But you do want to listen to what it is they're saying is true. You want to reassure them about supervision. And my teachers are taught to observe carefully. I can't speak as to what happened. I can only tell you that my experience is my teachers are doing a heck of a good job. We'll have to take a look and figure out what actually happened on this day and this time. And then you want to outline the steps for the follow-up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the teachers. I'm going to talk to the other teachers that are on the playground. And we're going to try to figure this out. And we'll all get together sometime tomorrow afternoon. By the way, not everything you do can ever address every concern a parent throws at you. They may just be out of here. They may leave you. That can happen. Our goal is to try to avoid it if possible. It's not always possible. There are some times when parents are not ready to be nice, and all they want to do is call their lawyer. And that kind of fight can really happen. The fourth thing is a parent may, these are just examples, may disagree with a school policy. Why can't my kid play on the school team if he has a C grade or lower? What do you mean you're going to hold me to the contract? I'm out of here. My kid's not going to be in school. You don't have an expense. We're moving to North Carolina. So again, there are all kinds of things that come up in the course of a day, a year, or a career with a family. So what are the key takeaways from today's talk? The first is, if we can respond to an upset parent who's complaining in a professional manner that's calm, there's a greater chance that we will build trust, confidence, and will reduce the level of conflict within our school. So when you get a petition from 60 families about a legitimate issue that wasn't your fault, just tell me more. I hear you. I don't blame you. I understand. Let's talk. By the way, you may not be able to tell them why those 12 people left. You may not be able to make those 60 parents calm down, but you certainly have more chance if you respond calmly than if you get defensive. Secondly, you want to listen with empathy, because those things are the foundation of calming situations down. Third thing is you want to be consistent in your follow-through. That, letting parents know they can count on you. If they bring a concern, you are not going to sweep it under the rug. You will take the time to understand what really happened. You are not going to hide it. You'll simply look at the truth. And finally, proactive communication between us and the families tends to prevent many of the problems that could come up next. So that's it. That's the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to invite Clint to turn on his camera again, and let's see what people might want to share.
All right. Well, there were a couple questions. This is recorded. Yes, it is recorded, so everybody will get that. Comment here from Nita saying great tips. Any questions? So let me throw it out there in terms of any questions that you might have. So we can, for the next 15 minutes or so, as we approach the end of the hour. Tim, I feel like you answered every possible question, so therefore we don't have any. We don't have any coming in.
Yeah. I've got a couple of school leaders in the room with me, and I'm going to say to them, do either of you have any questions? Because I used a lot of examples that are actually from your school.
Thank you, Margot. Here's a question. Any thoughts on engaging with the continually negative parent?
Yeah. Um, I think the question of negativity has it crossed the line from the loyal opposition, somebody who's a gadfly and a pain in our side, from somebody who basically is communicating, I don't have any trust and confidence in this school. So the question is there anything that you can do to avoid having the child put in the middle between an angry parent who can't get over her anger or distrust and this child in the school? I mean, it's not okay for a child to be in that kind of situation. And so when we reach that point where a parent is just behaving like we have just let them down so badly, but they have not withdrawn, I'll typically say something like this: Lisa, I don't know what to do. It seems like no matter how often we meet, no matter what I do, it doesn't seem to make you feel that you can trust us. And that breaks my heart. My worry is you seem to be so distrustful, so upset, that I'm afraid that you're putting Abigail, your daughter, in the middle. And that's not okay. If you really feel that upset, if there's nothing I can do to help you get to a place of trust, get to a place of calm, then I think we really got to look at whether we can continue to work together, because it's not fair to Abigail. It just isn't fair. And boy, is that tough when we need that tuition. Or we really love Abigail, but it's not fair to have Abigail put in the middle between us and her mother or father.
Good
I,
stuff.
I noticed somebody sent in a message.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can you please advise on how to respond to a parent who wants to know the consequences the school will give a child who hurt their child? So, one child hurts another child. What are the consequences?
Oh my
Or how
goodness.
to communicate
I
the
mean,
consequences?
yeah, I think the first thing, there's so many different permutations to this question. The first, the first general rule is we have to preserve the privacy of our employees and of our families, and of course the children of the school. So you cannot discuss another child with family. It's just they have the right to privacy. Um, you may have a policy, and it could be that you're enforcing, and you certainly have the right to say, we are a zero tolerance school. And when a child threatens the life and safety of another child verbally, we take it seriously. And this is what we do. It all depends. For example, the kid who says, my father's going to come to your house and he's going to kill your dog, that's pretty darn bad. On the other hand, that kid who said that was 4 years old. That was certainly disturbing, but I was not going to throw the kid out because he said that simply on the basis of that one day behavior. I was going to bring that parent in. I was not going to discuss, and I did not discuss that family and then what I said to that family's child and to the family with anyone else. So no matter how angry another parent was, it was simply something we were not going to discuss. Same thing. They quite often want to know, I want to know why those 12 teachers left. I want to know why this teacher resigned. I want to know why you fired this teacher. We've all had this kind of thing happen, or we will sooner or later have it. I want to know. The answer is, I'm so sorry. I understand why you want to know, but I can't discuss this with you. I am under an obligation to the law that I cannot discuss your child or one of my employees with anyone else. It is their private matter. And it's just not something that's up for discussion. And if they say, well, I already know what happened because they told me, the answer to that is they may have told you, but they have not told me. and I have no permission to release this information, and it is not something I can discuss ever. We have to protect the privacy of our community. See that Soraya's got her hand up. You want to unmute her?
Sorry, I'm muted. Sorry, I see you
Okay.
have your hand up. Did you want to unmute or did you want to type in a question?
I think she does. I'm going to unmute her. So hang on a second, Soraya. You're about to be unmuted. Feel free to talk. Oh, come on. Here we go. Hi, Soraya. You can unmute.
Mute. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. In that situation, I would like to say when I was giving tour and parents asked that question that in what situation you had the turnover and your teachers leave. So I give them three scenarios that either we did experience that, either it was a medical leave or relocation, or at some point they did not meet our expectation. I leave it at that.
Yeah. Those are good examples, Soraya. And again, if the teacher says, you know, I would always say when a teacher is leaving, whether they're the ones choosing to leave or it's mutual or whether we're the ones asking them to leave, I always say to them, let's think about what we're going to say. Let's see if you and I can come to common ground about what we say or don't say. Because quite often the teacher doesn't just disappear from the school. So we set up a scenario where the departing teacher can communicate with the children and the families of the school in a way that is not hurtful to the school, but we don't live on tenterhooks. Oh my God, this teacher's going to do something bad that's going to cause us to look bad. I mean, because the reality is this, while it's always possible parents are going to panic and withdraw from the school, the average parent feels bad for a teacher, but they feel a lot better for their child. I mean, they've got contract with you. It's hard to find a new school for their child. So parents often, as long as it's not really egregious, they'll feel bad for the teacher, but they understand that people leave for all kinds of reasons. And I really like the examples that you use, Soraya, of how you communicate it, including, every situation is different, but these are the three most typical examples that we see.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful topic. I have experienced most of the scenarios you have mentioned, and I wish I could have had this webinar before, so I could have handled it better. But in any situation, I was calm, and that is what I am famous for, how patient and tolerant I am. And the parents always were very respectful, very respectful.
Well, thanks, Soraya. I really appreciate it. Say hi to everyone up at your school.
Thank you.
I see that Margaret put something in. There may be other things that came in before Margaret.
I was looking through there. I don't believe so. But yeah, Margaret had said, I believe a school needs to be greater than any one employee, no matter who the employee is.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing where you can just simply say, our school is made up of people, but it is bigger than any one of us. And our teachers, we love them and we want them to stay, but sooner or later, we all leave. We all will leave to do something else. We have children, we decide to retire, we follow our spouse to a new city, or we decide we want to go live in Florida, whatever goes on. And, things change. We try, for the sake of children, whether they're teenagers or toddlers, to minimize the amount of turnover. We want as much consistency and stability as we possibly can get. We do the best we can, and it will never be as good as we wish it could be. We just do the very best we can. Anyone else?
What do I see for today, Tim? Or so far, unless anybody has any last minute questions.
Or you know, affirmations are good. I'm a great believer in check-ins and check-outs. So if you want to acknowledge something or have final words, I think that's a great way to end meetings. You know, like this was a great meeting and thank you, or I'm feeling refreshed, or I'm still feeling exhausted, or I'm looking forward to next week, or whatever it is, or can you talk about XYZ? Because we are here. And by the way, since Clint and I started this series back, gosh, when did we start this second webinar? It wasn't that long ago, was it?
Let's see, about 2 months, July.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is a series for independent school leaders, not just Montessori leaders, and not just about recruiting and retaining families and building up community, which is what we do on Tuesdays. And by the way, that webinar works great if you're running a Catholic school or a progressive school or whatever kind of school. It works great for anyone who's interested. But today, this is a day where we deal with whatever you got, whether it's what to do with a cheating senior, or should we do the IB or the Cambridge curriculum, or how do we start a high school, or whatever you got. And Clint and I have lots of great friends, and we will increasingly be inviting folks to join us and doing this as more of a round table so that it's not just listening to the same voices week after week. But again, we're here to help. I get a kick out of this. I enjoy it. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Anything coming in the chat that we ought to share?
Now, does everybody liking the topic? So certainly good timing on the topic, Tim.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say good night, Gracie. Clint, always good to talk.
Hey, Tim, if you have a second, there was one that came in I didn't see here. It was in the Q&A section. How to work with a parent who is reluctant for their child to move forward, even though the child is ready.
When you say move forward, whoever the speaker is, are we talking about moving forward in the sense of advancing from one level of the school to the next, like being promoted to another level? Or what do you mean by move forward?
Yeah, Vanessa, if you could type a quick follow-up there. It could be in the chat or the Q&A. In lessons, move forward in lessons.
Oh, well, I rarely have met a parent who is reluctant for that. However, I suppose the answer would be, tell me more. Let's meet. Tell me what's going on here. Do you want to bring, little Leopold with you, and let's talk to Leopold, see what's going on. Most kids want to learn. They may be feeling stupid. I mean, that can happen where they feel like, oh my God, this material or this lesson is too hard. I can't do it. I don't understand algebra. I don't understand chemistry. I feel dumb. So whatever it is, I'm a great believer in let's talk. Did you say that was Vanessa? Yeah,
Correct.
Vanessa, let me know quickly if there's anything else that you want to say. And feel free to unmute yourself, my friend, if you'd like to speak up. Well, again, it's so good to see old friends. Lisa, miss you, my friend. I'm in Maryland. Let's talk. Let's have coffee. Margaret, always good to see you. Hi, Anita. You're a retired teacher and you are, hold on, where is this message? Going down memory lane. I'm glad to hear that, Anita. I know the feeling. My wife, Joyce, would say that we really blew retirement. All right, everyone. It's really good to see you. We will see you next week. Clint, what is next week's topic? I'll be out in Oakland, California. I live out of a suitcase, by the way.
Next week's topic, why your school should move to mastery and progress report-based learning.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Mastery and report. Yeah, we can do that. Do you have a speaker you want to bring in or you want me to do it?
I was going to tap you on the shoulder.
Okay, well, I think Montessori is a group that believes in mastery learning anyway. I happen to be a member, or was a member, of the Mastery Consortium. So letter grades are not my favorite thing. I'm a believer in working at it until you've learned it correctly and you remember it. For those of you who are Montessori teachers, one of the things I often talk about is how in the 3-period lesson, just because you gave a lesson and the kid knew it today doesn't mean he remembers it after Christmas break. So we have to go back and re-present, recheck, and see if he really understands it and can teach it to you. Anyway, we'll talk about that next week. And let me see what Abigail, my trained AI graduate student, has to say about mastery learning, because I haven't written much about mastery learning. So we'll talk about that next Thursday. What are we talking about on Tuesday on our marketing admissions webinar?
Well, that's TBD.
Okay. All right, everyone. We will see you next week. I'll be in sunny California. Wherever you are, have a wonderful day and a great Friday coming up and a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Goodbye,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody. Bye.